Hello, welcome to Simcha, a celebration of life. I'm Nikki Wellman. The relationship between the Jews and the environment stems from Genesis 2:15, which states, "The Lord God took the man and placed him in the Garden of Eden to till it and tend to it." Living a green life has become so easily bantered. Rabbi Greg Alexander gives us his view on what this is all about and why it affects our lives.
When an observant Jew decides to buy food, they will ask, is this food kosher? And ordinarily, to determine if something is kosher, one would look for a kosher stamp on the product. The question is, what about issues that have not been considered, such as, is it kosher, is it acceptable to drink kiddush, which is every Shabbat or every festival, we sanctify the day through the drinking of wine or grape juice, and in order to make this more easy to do, it's easy to put out plastic cups and you drink the kiddush and you throw away the plastic cup afterwards. But does that in some way, the fact that this is not a recyclable plastic cup, does that impact on the kashrut, on the suitability of that food for you to eat? The Torah tells us a lot of things about what we can and can't eat. It also tells us about the way that we should treat the environment. So there is a discussion in the Torah about if you go out to war and you're besieging a city, and that in that siege you need to chop down some trees in order to get access to the city. It specifically says you're not allowed to chop down the fruit trees. That's what it says in the Torah. So looking at this verse in the Torah, is this verse just about fruit trees? Or is there something deeper to be understood from this verse? So when someone like Maimonides, again about 1,000 years ago, but deeply involved in determining what was Jewish law at the time, when he looked at this verse, he needed to decide, is this just about trees, or is this about a greater principle? And he formulated, or he's one of the legal experts who formulated the principles of Bal Tashchit, literally meaning do not waste, do not destroy, do not wantonly destroy. So this law, according to him, was not just about chopping down fruit trees. So it was about needlessly destroying anything. So he literally said, do not waste anything. And imagine if that was applied in the way that we live our lives today. There is great emphasis placed on so many different mitzvot, so many commandments that Jews observe. Sometimes we lose track of the impact of Bal Tashchit, of not destroying, not wasting. Think of the way that we live our lives. If we want to live our lives powerfully, Jewishly involved in the world, we need to really conduct an audit of the way that we live our lives. Do we recycle paper in our homes? So if our synagogues are printing out a newsletter and that newsletter is going on non-recyclable paper, that's a problem. If it doesn't go into a recycle bin, you're transgressing Bal Tashchit. It's a mitzvah not to waste. So this is something that has to have an impact on synagogues, on Jewish communities, and on individuals in our homes. As homeowners, as Jewish families, what can we do in relation to this mitzvah? We can look at the way that we live our lives. So there are very simple and easy things to do. Paper in the home, newspapers, old printed out pieces of sheets, announcements from the kids' school. Where do those go? If they're going into the bin, that's the wrong place. Bal Tashchit, you can't chuck it in the bin. You've got to put it into a bag and take it to a recycle. Now, this is again a challenge because unfortunately in South Africa today, the cities are not set up very well for recycling. It's getting better. But again, we need to challenge our council. We need to say to our schools and our city councils, why are you not coming and picking up our paper and our plastics and our tins for recycling? So as Jews, we can help to lobby our city councillor and say, this is something that needs to happen. As our synagogues, we should look around the synagogue and say, have we got low energy light bulbs in the classrooms, in the synagogue? Is the Ner Tamid That's the light that is always on. That uses electricity. Is that an eco bulb or is that a regular light bulb? So a simple question, asking those kind of questions, helps us to make our synagogues more sustainable and helps us as Jews not to transgress the mitzvah of Bal Tashchit. If we go back to the creation of the world and God showing Adam around the Garden of Eden and God saying to Adam, look at these works, look at my amazing works, don't destroy them because there's no one after you that will be able to repair it. This is the same message we need to hear in our ears, ringing in our ears. It is a divine imperative, it is a mitzvah from God to say that the world that we live in is the only world that we have and we need to live in it sustainably. Is there some way we can make our footprint smaller? Is there some way that we can change, small changes and big changes, the way that we live, the way our families live, the way our synagogues operate and our schools operate? If there's anything that we can do, it is a mitzvah to do it, and we must do it now.
Shtetl Connections is an organization that provides a service to Jews whose families come from Shtetl, small towns or villages in Eastern Europe. This is done through the organizing of events and get-togethers to help people reconnect by meeting others who either descend from or lived in the same areas, and by assisting them in their historical and genealogical research into their origins.
I think that one of the problems that we've suffered from as Jews over the centuries is the trauma as a result of forced immigration from various countries in which we've lived all over the world, as a result of which many families have been destroyed and have separated and have gone different ways. So for me, an organization like Shtetl Connections is very exciting because it enables us to repair some of the damage that has been caused through Jewish history, where we had lost touch with our own family members. And that to me is something very, very precious, that we can reconnect to people to whom we have a blood connection. Shtetl Connections has, over the past 10 years, had many, many functions in South Africa, both in Johannesburg and in Cape Town, where we bring people together that were in the same shtetl. We had one very big function, for example, at the Great Park synagogue, where we brought people together from the shtetl of Rakashik, and they came together to talk about their families from Rakashik, talk about photographs and things that they have been told from their families about their shtetl. We've also had functions at the Biyachad building and other places, which we've called A Taste of Lithuania, where we've played the music, Yiddish music. We've had singers that came to sing in Yiddish songs from their home, from Lithuania, Jewish food. I did the historic part by doing a slide presentation about the history of Lithuania, our Jewish culture, and Eli spoke about his genealogical research and how people can use the internet in finding their families.
Everyone has a certain amount of curiosity about their background. I think we have this idea that because of the Holocaust, because of perhaps our grandparents, our parents didn't tell us enough, that is the dead end and that's the end of the road. It isn't, in fact. I think today it is so possible to be able to get onto various sources via the internet, via archives, and via records that are available, becoming more and more available in places such as Lithuania. And in fact, today, the translation of many of these records is now being put onto websites. But in general, I think it is more a question of knowing where you come from to be able to know where you're going to. And that, to me, I think is a very important fact.
Jewish people across the country are absolutely fascinated at all the various routes that Jews have traveled over the centuries, migrating from the Middle East to Western Europe, from Western Europe to Central Europe, from Central Europe to Eastern Europe. And one of the ideas that I put across is that we are not as homogeneous as we would like to think. And one of the startling revelations that I found is that many Lithuanian Jews in their genealogical research find that they actually descend from the Sephardim of Western Europe. And I remember that my mother told me that her father told her that he was told in turn that we have Spanish Jews on our family tree. And perhaps that's the dark hair and the dark brown eyes, etc. And I think that the lines have been blurred in the sense that as Jews have migrated to various countries, Ashkenazim have adopted Sephardi traditions, Sephardim have adopted Ashkenazi traditions, and I think that the bloodlines are very much mixed, which to me is a very beautiful idea, that at the end of the day, although in God's design we've been placed on the 4 points on the globe, we are really one people with a common heritage. And therefore, when I talk to any Jewish audience, whatever the history of a Jewish community, it all resonates for that community, because we are in fact all a part of everything that has happened to the Jewish people over 3,000 years of Jewish history.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you so much for being with us. And remember, we would love to hear from you. So please find us on Facebook at Spirit Sister Productions Network. As always, from me, Nikki, and the entire team, shalom and have a safe and peaceful week.